Okay. That's better. Oh, okay. That's not too bad. Let me see my cats. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Sasheen here. It's been a while since I've gone live, but I wanted to because it's the top of the year, and I think it's a great time to get back to talking about all of the wonderful ways in which you can pursue the things that are important to you. So, as I get all of my notes, I was going to do this from my computer, but unfortunately, the battery died, and I'm not in a position. I've got too many things plugged in. So hopefully you can hear me. Not using that. Hopefully you can hear me. You can see the little glass cats in the back, and hopefully you can see that beautiful night sky back there. So, calling all teachers, professors, adjuncts, aspiring teachers, people who are in higher education or K through 12, it's a really tough gig right now to be in education. There's a pandemic raging, but even with the pandemic raging, it's been a really tough gig to be in education for a while now. I am a former professor. I taught at several universities, tenure track, so I know from which I speak. And I was one of the fortunate ones who had tenure track positions and have done the whole spectrum of education from adjunct professor, grad student, TA, all the way to tenure track professor. So I know that it's really tough I know that it's tough out there. And I know that even before 2019, when COVID-19 showed up, the COVID-19 variant showed up, it was already kind of a game of roulette when you were going through school to become a teacher. Now, K through 12, you all have a little bit of a different scenario in that you specialize in their certifications and things of that nature. So I'm not going to speak out of turn because I don't have the same insight into K through 12. So I'm speaking today to teachers in higher education, adjuncts, professors, graduate TAs, and aspiring professors out there who think, oh my gosh, I so love this. I want to one day teach in the classroom, in college classrooms, and it's going to be great. It is great. There's something so amazing about standing in the classroom and sharing your knowledge with students who really choose to be there because they've chosen your class or they've chosen the major that you teach in as part of their life progression. There's nothing greater than that feeling, except there actually is. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. There's actually a lot of things that help that feeling become even better. And so part of the title of this video is, it's okay to quit your job. It's okay to not want to do this anymore. And if you're watching this video, chances are you're already thinking about or have thought about or have actively decided that it's time for you to leave higher education, that you're just not sure, what else am I going to do? I've been doing this thing my whole life, or I've been training for this moment, or you're a grad student and you're like, I can see what my professors are going through and I don't really want any of that. So you may be asking yourself, what is it that I want to do? Like, how do I want to do this? How do I want to make this transition out of higher education? Or do I even want to transition out of higher education? Do I just want to do something else? And is it okay? And that's actually the biggest question that I get. Is it okay? Like, is it okay to have spent a lot of time, effort, and energy? I have a PhD. There's a meme floating around some of the groups that I belong to saying, have you really mastered your craft? Have you done the 10,000 hours? I believe it's Robin Sharma who says that. Actually, it's not. I think it's actually Edison who might have said it. Anyway, have you done your 10,000 hours? Are you an expert? Let me tell you something. I did my 10,000 hours in my discipline. I'm an expert in my discipline. You're not going to get 3 degrees in one discipline and not be able to call yourself an expert in that discipline. That's not the problem. You've done your work. But the question becomes, for the hours that you have invested and the money, we're going to talk about 3 things. The hours that you've invested, the money that it takes to get that degree, and the life that that degree brings or promises to bring that doesn't necessarily ring true once you get out there. And why it's okay to start thinking that maybe you want more. This is not a bash against higher education. Some of my best friends are professors still. They love their jobs. But I also hear the frustrations of knowing that they're capped at what they can bring home unless they shift into administration on top of their teaching duties and get the bump that way. because once you reach tenure, there's just not many other places to go. Or they start writing books and hope that those books are adopted and become part of the curriculum, or they do the blasphemous thing of writing fiction or something that's completely novel and being compensated for that. So let's start at the top. If you have reached the place where you are teaching or aspiring to teach, that means you're in grad school, you've done a lot of time in your discipline. You've invested a lot to expand your knowledge, and we are encouraged to do that, right? We want people to expand their horizons and expand their knowledge and really embrace the idea, embrace being learned. And there's something so beautiful about learning. It's one of my favorite things. It's always going to be one of my favorite things. I love learning new things. It brings a smile to my face, makes me excited, right? So you invest a lot of time, whether it's a BA, BS, BA, anywhere from 4 to 6 years is the average. Then you get the master's degree, right? Another 2 years, maybe you started the associates and then you get the BA, then you go and you get the BA or the BS, then you get the master's degree. And then you get the PhD. So you put in a lot of time to be really good at what you are going to teach. Kudos, because it takes a lot of work. And I really wish that people who like to poke fun at higher education understood that these people have spent a lot of time and they've invested many a sleepless night into the acquisition of their craft, okay? They're not fly-by-night people who don't know what they're talking about in their particular area of expertise. Chances are they are the most versed person that you're going to meet because they have done the work to get those degrees, and that's a lot of work. My bad, I forgot to turn off notifications, so let me do that right now. So you've invested a lot of time, and that cannot be taken away from you. Number 2, you invested a lot of money. Let's do the math, right? Let's start at the beginning of this process. Say you graduate from high school and you decide to take your state up, if some states have this, I don't know if all of them do, on the offer of a 2-year associate's degree. Whew, okay, so you get those basics out of the way before you head off to the bachelor's degree, right? If you're lucky, the state picks up the tab for those 2 years, or it's really inexpensive. Okay, you got your associates. Really inexpensive, might have gotten a grant or even just paid for it because it wasn't very expensive for you, or the state might have covered it. Then you go into the bachelor's degree. If you come in with those 2 years, that's only 2 more years worth of pay, but that's a big jump from associates to bachelor's, right? That's a big jump in money, even at a state school. But let's say you don't get the associates and you come into the bachelor's degree. On average, it takes about 5 years to get a 4-year degree. 5 years to get a 4-year degree. So you've got, say you come in with 2, another 3 years tuition, room, and board if you're living on campus, and a lot of folks like to. Tuition, room, and board, or say just tuition. Okay, you put some bank in, or maybe mom and dad did. Maybe you got scholarships. Maybe you got fellowships. Maybe you got a way to help pay for that. Great, fantastic. So if you stop with the BA, BS, you could come out with $0 in debt, or you can come out with a lot of dollars in debt, depending on how long it takes you to get through, right? And what major you've decided to embrace, because some majors are very inexpensive, some majors are really, really expensive. But let's say you don't stop, because remember, you're going to be a teacher. You're aspiring to be a part of higher education in the teaching part of it. That means you got to go on. You got to get the master's degree now. Okay, here we go. Master's doesn't come with those nifty scholarships that got you through bachelor's degree potentially. So you're talking loans or out of your pocket. Okay, 2 years at least for a master's degree. At least. You can get it done in 18-ish months. I did mine in 18 months. But I mean, 18 months, 24 months, it's a difference of a semester. So that's money. But, about 2 years to get a master's degree. 1, depending on what you're trying to get your master's degree in. But okay, so now we're up to another, 2 years worth of funding. Loans, funding. Let's say you just stop there. Baby, you have spent some bank to get that degree, okay? Don't ever let anybody tell you that your degree is worthless, because you know how much it costs. You know exactly how much it costs. No master's student paid $100 and some for a textbook who does not know exactly to the penny how much it costs to get that degree. But let's say that you talk to someone who is a professor and they say, oh, but really, if you want to teach, Because you can teach adjunct with a master's degree, right? I did it. That's how I got started. You can teach adjunct as a master's or with a master's degree. So you get out there in the adjunct world and maybe you're teaching and you're teaching and you're teaching and you start to realize, this is hard. Like I've got these loans and this does not pay. I can't make it like this. So I can either go on and get the PhD or I can get a job because I can't survive on adjunct pay. So let me just stop there. Because now I'm going to talk directly to my adjuncts right here. It is indentured servitude to be an adjunct in the United States of America. There is no reason for adjuncts to have to go on welfare or food stamps because colleges are literally paying so little money in higher education for the knowledge. Remember, I just said you started and maybe you got an associate's, maybe you didn't, but you've got a 4-year degree and another 2-year degree under your belt, BA and a master's, and you are barely making enough to make rent and a car payment. To heck with new clothes, to heck with eating at fancy restaurants, and you're expected to go to conferences, and you're expected to publish, and you are making goose egg amounts of money. Okay. So to my adjuncts out there, I started as an adjunct, and the reason I went on and got my PhD was so I could actually get a job that paid something. Because as an adjunct, I had to work 5 to 6 different schools in order to make ends meet. That was just to keep it together. That wasn't to live well. That was to keep my little bitty apartment, in a not great neighborhood, safe enough. There's the story of the adjunct who was teaching for 25 years at Duquesne University, and they fired her after 25 years, and she died of a heart attack from the stress of that moment. And you know what? She died destitute. And that actually prompted me to make this video because that is unfortunately too many adjuncts in this country. If something happened to them tomorrow, they would be absolutely destitute. They would have nothing to fall back on because adjuncting does not pay enough for them to even buy a new car after graduate school. Some adjuncts are still driving the same car they had in grad school because they can't afford to buy a new one. Okay, so you got your master's degree, you're adjuncting, you ain't making no money. You're gaining experience, but you ain't making no money. And you got to keep finding a way to publish because you've decided to go back and get your PhD. You got to do it. There's just no other way to make it in higher education if you don't get the PhD. Unless you're going to go into the corporate side of it, which I'll talk about in a second. But unless you're going to go into the corporate side of it, even then, there's just no way. You know how many people that I know in administration who went back and got the master's because the job they have requires a master's degree that they're never going to use anyway? But the job that they have in higher education says, oh, but you should have a master's because you work for a higher education institution. So you should go get a master's degree too to have this same position. And we might bump your pay $5,000. As I said, don't ever let anybody tell you that your degrees are worthless because you know how much your degrees cost. You know how much they cost. Okay, so you decide to go back and get the doctorate. It's heady days, filling out that application, deciding what to put into it. You've been adjuncting. Oh my gosh, this is the big step. This is a big leap because for about 4 years, you're going to experience something that you probably haven't had since you started adjuncting, and that's some stability. Being in grad school actually brings with it a level of stability. That's the reason a lot of folks never leave. I digress. But being in school kind of brings with it a level of stability. You can get loans, grants, stipends. You got to find the money. But if you can just keep it going and don't mind living pretty subsistence most of the time, you just kind of keep going. You decide to get a PhD. You apply. You get in. You're part of the ivory tower. You have made it through the doors. Let's talk about that. The price of a PhD in the humanities. Woo! The amount of money that you're about to spend to get that degree is, well, it's something. It's absolutely something. Usually this is where I'd break down what I spent to get my doctorate, but honestly, at this point, I've said it so many times, it's in a video somewhere. Let's just say I have a large amount of debt that I am paying off, but it is a large amount of debt. It is a large amount of debt. And that amount of debt should come with something. And that's where I come in today to talk to you about how it's okay to want to do something that actually pays you more than just a subsistence existence. Now, someone out there is going to say, hang on a second, because once you get the PhD, once you get the PhD, I know people with PhDs, right? I do too. I have one. I live in the world of them. I know people that teachers have summers off. They have, oh, I just kicked up something. Summers off. They have winters off. They start out at like $60,000, $70,000 a year sometimes. They don't. They can work anywhere. They have these cushy, they get to work in these beautiful campuses, old buildings. They have access to all of this great technology and only in business school, or engineering school, or STEM school. You have this life, right? Like, this is nirvana. Nirvana's price tag on average is about $110,000 for all of the degrees that you now have. That's conservative. You are now $110,000 in debt. Let me lay something down for you. Student loan debt in this country is crazy, right? Graduate school students who go to attain a higher education beyond the bachelor's, carry 40% of that debt. Yes, that includes the doctors and the lawyers. It also includes the PhDs. They carry 40% of the total student loan debt, and yet they encompass the smallest percent of graduates. Ask yourself, when someone asks you, oh, you have a PhD or you have a master's? Well, that, blah, blah, blah. Remind yourself, I know how much it costs to get this degree because I have the loans to prove it. So you invested the time and you have invested the money. Okay, so now what? This is the third thing I want to say to you. That should mean a career and a vocation that allows you to live this great life. Travel, talking to people all day long about these heady ideas, teaching, writing, carrying the weight of research on your shoulders, making breakthroughs, exploring questions. All of this is a promise that does not get fulfilled when you don't have enough money to survive. When you just don't have enough money to survive. Some of the most successful academics that we know, that I can tell you their names, are so successful, and you might know their names because they do something else. They do something else. Dr. John Gray is one of the most successful people to come out of my discipline of communication. He gets vilified for being a millionaire. But Dr. John Gray and others of that stature who said, I'm going to take my degree and I'm going to make it work for me in a different way, are vilified because they recognize the underbelly of what I'm talking about today. And that is, for all the time and effort that you put into getting degrees to become a teacher, professor, and all the money that you spend to get to that point as well, what's the return on your investment? Have you sat down and really calculated the cost of what you are now earning and how much you spent to get here in time and money? And have you said, gosh, that was completely worth it? Or have you more likely said, holy heavens, I did graduate with my PhD and I had to take a job, the first job. Chances are, unless you're a powerhouse in your field, you're not going to get that first tier job that you apply for. And if you are, you're going to get a crappy paycheck for it. I can tell you the stories of many, many colleagues who we all took jobs out of our PhD, our first year, who are not at those jobs any longer, or who are still at those jobs because they couldn't go anyplace else because they're making such little money, and the money to move is not there. The next job isn't better. You have to do a lot of soul searching when you take a job in higher academics, because that initial job offer that everyone goes, oh my God, you must have been offered like 60, 70, 80. No. The average starting salary for a professor fresh out of grad school is like $45,000, maybe 50, possibly 55, depending on where you live. Okay. My first job was at the University of Puerto Rico. I was offered $65,000 a year. That sounds great, right? I live in Puerto Rico. This is not cheap. $65,000 a year before taxes. Taxes hadn't come out yet. There's no cost of living adjustment sometimes, depending on the school that you're at. So University of Puerto Rico, $65,000, and I was offered an extra, I think it was $2,000 or $3,000 for some kind of differential. So I was making 68. Then all the taxes came out. Then student loans came out. Here's the rub that people don't realize. For the next 5 years, if I'd stayed there or anywhere, your first year, you're not going to get a raise. So the cost of living around you can go up. You're locked into whatever you can negotiate on day one for the next 5 until you can come up for tenure. Until you can come up for tenure, or you have some kind of review that has a pay bump attached to it, then you are stuck like Chuck at that pay, period. Most college graduates coming out of with their doctorate don't start at $68,000. They simply don't. I had to leave the continental United States to get that money. My colleagues started at 50, 55, before taxes. The return on your investment of time and energy to get into teaching is generally not balanced. It's simply not balanced. Sorry, I heard a noise. It's simply not balanced. And because it's not balanced, there's this assumption that, oh, but it'll get better. I will have these perks, right? I'll have all of these different perks. And they're not there. The promise just doesn't fulfill itself, because what you realize if you work inside the ivory tower is that a lot of time is spent publish or perish. You gotta crank out this research so that you can keep that job. You deal with students in politics. Love my students, hated the politics. Oh my gosh, hated the politics. You've got to sit on committees. You've got to do admin work, because you've got to do administration work, because the only way you're going to see more money is if you can somehow make yourself more valuable. So you're working to publish. You've got to teach your classes. And the myth that we all have TAs is a myth. Undergraduate, we ain't got no TAs. You are working to publish. You're teaching your classes. You're grading your papers. You're sitting on committees. You're doing administration. In the midst of that, people are like, but you have summers off. No, I have to work in the summers. And you know why I have to work in the summers? Because I don't make enough money during the school year, and I don't get paid in the summer. That beautiful salary that you hear a lot of professors, people think professors have this huge salary, pays 9 months out of the year. And people say, oh, well, then you're supposed to take that money and stretch it out over 12 months so that you make X number of dollars, and then you will be covered. And the funny thing is, yes, that sounds great, and some schools will let you do that. And then you realize, but again, I don't have any other income coming in. I get no cost of living adjustments. I have no performance reviews. I have no way of making this grow at all unless I take on something extra. So most professors, I would say 98% of professors that you meet work in the summer. They either teach other jobs, they either teach at their school, they take on adjunct work, back to the adjunct world again. They take on adjunct work at another school. Or they take on work outside of academia so that they can just make some extra money. And the time off for those holidays, there's this thing called winter session between fall semester and spring semester. There's like 4 weeks. We're working. They're teaching classes. They're offering classes. They're trying to work and get another couple of $1,000s in the bank so that they have a little extra money. So when you start to look at the time that you've invested, the money that you've invested, and the matter of fact of reality that you're not in any way, shape, or form ever going to be able to get out of the place where you're at, you start to understand why a lot of teachers always look poor. And I use poor in the sense that they always look like they're 10 years behind the times. It's not that we don't like nice things. It's not that we don't want beautiful things. I mean, I live in New York. I love living in New York. It's not that we don't want more. We can't afford it. Genie's out of the bottle. We can't afford it. And I don't know about you, but when you start realizing how much time you're trading of your life to do the academic crunch, you begin to realize there's just not enough ways to make money that's going to get me out of this. Because by the time my student loans are paid off, I'm going to be 60. If I'm lucky, I might be 65. And then if my state hasn't squandered it, I might have some kind of retirement coming. But there's a reason those white-haired professors are standing in the front of the classroom. Do not let this myth that they're doing it for the love of academics snow you. They're doing it because they don't have any money. They can't afford to retire. They simply can't, because if they do, what they're making at that moment will not sustain them in retirement. So they have to keep working. Now, I said, calling all adjuncts, teachers, professors, and aspiring teachers. It's okay to want to quit your job. And that's what I'm going to end with. And I'm going to tell you why it's okay to quit your job. And I'm going to give you 5 different things to start thinking about, 5 different jobs that I want you to think about, adding to your repertoire as you begin thinking about how to get out. Like I said at the top of this video, if you're watching this, it's because you are there. You are looking around going, there has got to be a better way. It's not that you don't love what you do. Of course you love what you do. People go into teaching understanding that it doesn't pay a whole lot, but the perks of it are going to be amazing. The problem is the perks are not enough to keep you going when you have to decide between the flip phone from 1980 and a smartphone where you could actually do something on it as you're sitting in your 1982 car. Okay, I'm speaking from experience. But when you start thinking about doing something else, right? Deciding to get out, you're going to start to get that pushback. And that's very scary. You have invested time and money into being a doctor, into being a professor. There is a lot of baggage that comes with that. A lot of pride and ego and a lot of prestige. And you might think, if I don't do this, who am I? Who am I supposed to be? Not to mention my colleagues are going to vilify me. They're going to not understand. They're not going to support me. They're not going to. When my dear friend left academics, she didn't tell me for 6 months. And I'm one of those open people that I know. But when she left and took a job at Intel, she finally called me and said, no, she didn't wait that long. Sorry. It was 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And she said, I didn't renew my contract at University of blah, blah, blah. And, yeah, I'm out. I applied for a job at Intel. I'm moving to Portland. And she left and she didn't tell anybody. And the reason that she didn't tell anybody for a long time is because of the stigma that gets attached to people who say, I actually just want a life. I want a life. I'm tired of the politics and all the work that I have to do in academics to not get paid for. The amount of unpaid labor in academics that you don't see, that people do to keep departments going, that they just do it, is astronomical. And if professors actually demanded what they were worth, oh my gosh, let me back up. If adjuncts demanded what they were worth, they'd make $10,000 a credit hour, or at least $10,000 a class. For the amount of work that an adjunct is pulling down so that university departments can keep running, they are most assuredly should be making at least $10,000 a class. And if professors did the same thing, the amount of money that they should be pulling down for all the unpaid labor that they do would be in the 6 figures. Now, I know someone out there is going to say that, well, it's a choice to be a teacher. It is a choice to be a teacher. Where are you going to send your kid? Who do you want teaching them? The one who's done the 10,000 hours and possibly even had a life before they went back to school? Hi, went back in my 30s, came with some experience, brought it to the classroom. That's why I could teach my area of major of communication and in the business school, because I came with some chops behind me. You want me in the classroom, but you don't want to pay. And so to you out there who's listening to this, who's like, but my colleagues, my colleagues, what are they going to say? This is who I am. You have to make the decision on whether or not you want to be seen as prestigious or if you want to live. If you want to live. And here's the thing, you've got so many skills now, right? You have so much to offer to the rest of the world. And we are blinding academics and putting them like in these horse blinders and go, you've done all this work and spent all this money, but you can't use it anyplace else outside of these walls. Because if you do, that's not very academic of you. You can write a book. It better not be popular. You can do some consulting on a show, but it better just be consulting. Don't you do any writing for a show, because that's not academic. Unless you happen to be, a doctorate in theater or something. Don't you dare do things that aren't considered prestigious in this way. And so we keep ourselves broke. But you don't have to. You don't have to. It is completely okay to quit your job. It is completely okay to turn down a tenure track position. It is completely okay to say, not only am I going to turn down a tenure track position, I'm not going to do any of this teaching stuff. Not like this. No, you people are crazy. Because your skill set, the things that you now know how to do, because you've put yourself through all of this education for all of this time, you know so much about how life works, how to do research, how to write, how to edit, how to run an organization. Hello, I was the chair of a department. I'm co-chair of my curriculum in my department. Sorry, I have to get these things straight. I wore too many hats, and that's one of the reasons why I left. I wore too many hats. You have a lot of skills that can work for you and make you money. And that's my bottom line for this video. The last thing I want is for my colleagues in higher education to continue to labor intensely for no money. And I'm just going to call a spade a spade. It's no money. The cost of everything is rising except salaries in higher education. I know colleagues who've been waiting years for promised pay bumps because they got raises or they got some kind of adjustment of their status 5 years ago, but the university didn't have the money to pay them because states have cut funding. So they're still waiting for the money. Is that you? Are you one of those people? Are you still waiting for that pay bump? Are you someone who is looking down the road, okay, I just got this great job for $60,000 and that is all I'm going to make. And I have to live in New York City and I can't even afford an apartment. Is that you? Is the 3-hour commute out to whatever suburb you can find a room to rent worth it? Are you willing to live someplace so far off the beaten path just for a salary that you can live on, but there's nothing around you? There's nothing there because it was the only job that you could get that would allow you to actually have a living wage. And that school probably knows you're not going to stay, but they have to offer so much to get you in the door. It's okay to say enough is enough. It's okay to start over. You have all the skills necessary to start over. Now, when I say start over, I'm not talking about going back to school and getting another degree. Stop that. No. What I'm talking about is, what would it look like? What would you do if you did something else? What would you do if you did something else? Do you actually want to be a writer and you don't have any desire to publish your parish? Then why aren't you writing? I know why you're not writing, because you don't have any time. You don't have any time. You have no time to write. You got to publish your parish. You got papers to grade. You got stuff to do. And by the time the day ends, all you want is a good cup of coffee or a strong drink and some food. And the last thing that you want, and if you have a family, you got them. So the last thing that you want to have to do is, on top of the research requirement, try to work on your fiction in the middle of the night. Because until you gain tenure, you don't have any time. Well, guess what, darlings? That's 6 to 7 years of your life. Prime time years of your life that you are not going to get back. You're not going to get back. So what would it look like to start over? What would it look like? So let's see. What could you do? I have a short list. It is 2022. I was going to say 2021. It is 2022. It is time to take a lay of the land, not just of higher education, but of the entire landscape of employment. We are cranking out a lot of people with degrees. There's not enough jobs to go around. But you know where the industries are that are flourishing? Content creation, digital marketing, editors, book editors. Blogging is still one of the fastest growing professions. And let me tell you something. My dear master's degree, PhD researching fiends out there, if you had a blog where you could talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, I don't even care. Underwater basket weaving. That's the inside joke in academics, right? I'm going to get a degree in underwater basket weaving. But if you had a blog where you worked at that blog as diligently as you worked at, say, publishing some paper that nobody's going to read, no one's going to care about, and you're only publishing it literally to get tenure because no one is going to read it unless you do something phenomenal. I like to tell people who remind me, well, Brene Brown teaches. Do you know how many books that woman has to crank out to make some money? Number one. And she didn't start cranking those books out until she hit tenure. Because until that moment, there was no book coming that was going to do anything. And she had to write a book. She wasn't if she had written that same stuff in an academic article, you would care nothing about it because it's not for the public consumption. But I digress. What say all the hours you spend researching whatever latest theory or hypothesis that you want to test? What if you just blogged about it? Real world implications of, I don't know, whatever it is that you're interested in, and made it accessible, humanized it even, and put it on WordPress. And then what if, because you're writing about it consistently, you're talking about your blog, it's going out there, it's being consumed, holy cow, consumed by people who like to read stuff like that, you end up with people wanting to advertise on your blog. What is that all about? And then what if, hang on, come with me. What if you end up being an affiliate for some people with products that relate to the thing that you're writing about every week because you love it? You love it so much, you write about 2-3 times a week. And then what if all of a sudden you have replaced your income? Not writing things that no one is going to read, writing things that everyone wants to read. Because you know how to organize a thought, you know how to organize a paper. You may need to brush up on what it means to write for the layperson versus the academic, right? Because we get wrapped into a certain way of wording things and saying things, and our language becomes very stilted. The more we have to write academically, it's very stilted. It's very passive and very stilted. So you might have to go back a little bit and retrain your brain to write for the layperson, but think about how much more fun that feels, and you can make some money. You don't even have to give up your day job yet. What if you decided that you just didn't want to do the whole academic writing thing anymore? What if you're an adjunct sitting out there right now and you are sitting on a novel? You are just, but you got to publish something academic because you really want a tenure track job because you're so tired of adjuncting and you're just tired of not having benefits and you're tired of not having this and you're tired of not having that. And oh, what if you put up a Facebook page with your novel and begin dripping out pieces of it and let people read it and then maybe pay you for the next chapter and the next chapter, and you build a following of loyal readers who want to know, well, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? And all of a sudden you're making money for something that you love, for characters that you've created, for ideas that you've been sitting on for 5 years because you had to teach 5 different universities just to make rent. What if that's you? I can go on. I can absolutely go on. Do you know how many job postings there are for book editors, for editors at publishing companies, that my colleagues, the ones who are watching me now, the ones who watch the replay, could do in their sleep and get paid pretty good money for it, even as a side hustle? Oh, I can't side hustle. I have to work an extra. I have to just work in the summer. I have to just work an extra class in the summer. I just, I got to keep my head down. I got to use the summer to write, and I got to teach, and I got to make money. Okay. When you get off the hamster wheel that is this life, what are you going to have to show for it? Because again, there are a lot of gray-haired professors that are still teaching, not for love of the game, but because they have no choice. Because they have no choice. And I want you to start really asking yourself, what if I have another 10, 15, 20 years? What can I do? What do I want to be doing? What is it that I can start doing that'll ease me out of academics? Because I'm ready to be gone. And if you're watching this, you probably are. Or what do I want to just like cold turkey? On Monday morning, I'm going to start doing something different, but I don't know where to start because I've been in academics for 10 years, 15 years. I don't even know where to begin. You begin by assessing what your skills are and deciding what to do next. There are channels of people on YouTube because the second biggest search engine after Google is YouTube. The second biggest search engine in the world after Google is YouTube. And sorry, it's my kid. He had to go through. And do you know why? Because people go to Google to find something and then they go, oh, there's a video. And they go to YouTube to figure it out. Could you be there? Could you be there? Could you be that person that they go, oh, let me click on her video because she's talking about how to do this or the stages of grief or what it means when this happens to me or my emotional intelligence, all of these cool and wonderful things because you're really creative and you know how to put together a lecture? Could you be creating your own courses and putting them out for sale? Because let's face it, the model of academics is going to have to change. Online learning is here to stay. It's not going away. And the hybrid may be more in danger than the online. Okay? Could you be putting your own classes together, your own courses together, charging for them what you feel like they're worth, finding a platform and then marketing them out and making money on things that you've created that can continue to pay? All while keeping that day job if you want to keep it. Or quitting it because now you've discovered that not only can you make money outside of academics doing interesting things that you like, you can now make money any way that you want to. There's no limit on what you can do. And the thing about being in academics is sometimes we feel very limited by what we can do because of the constraints of the world that we are a part of. And when you begin to realize that you have taken the lid off the bottle or let the genie out of the bottle, so to speak, and there are many things that you can now do, many things. All of a sudden making money 2 or 3 different ways, it's like, oh, that's just what I do, y'all. That's just what I do. I might live stream, talking about something. I have some books that I might write. Oh, and they may not be academic books. They might be books people want to read. They might be, how many times have you sat in an academic circle and just listened to people trash books, just trash them? I can remember sitting in my own grad school classes and we just trashed some really, really successful authors. And you know why we trashed them? Because they took the theories that we were learning and they turned them into profit. They turned them into profit. And so while we were trashing them, they were driving brand new cars. While we were trashing them, they were buying houses. While we were trashing them, they were literally selling their 5th or 6th edition of their book, making money, starting institutes, licensing people in their own coaching, in their own processes, making money hand over fist, not languishing in student debt, not staying up trying to get papers written and graded for students who are a lot less polite than they used to, and parents, don't even get me started. Not trying to find ways to squeeze money out of the administration for things that you need. Remember I talked about technology and how, oh, you must love higher education. You get access to all this great technology. No, you don't. How many classrooms have I walked into that I supplied my own computer? Because there just wasn't one. Because it just wasn't there. So, we trashed these people who were successful, who had taken the time that they had invested and the money that they had invested in their degree and said, I don't need to be broke. And it's weird to me that the trade-off of higher education is that you get the prestige of being a professor if you can accept the fact that you're probably going to be broke for the rest of your life. My mentor, the one who urged me to go back to school and get my degree, my doctorate, became the vice chair, the vice president for quite a while. And he took on the roles because as a professor, full professor, tenure, full professor, not in any danger of losing his job. He knew the money was at the vice presidency level. That's where the money was. Not in the classroom. The money was getting up the ladder. Do you know how many professors are never going to get up that ladder? They're never going to get there. They're going to continue to struggle. And we make peace with it, right? We make peace with the struggle because we're doing this profession and it's what we've always wanted. But I can guarantee you that when you said yes to that contract, you didn't say yes to being poor and broke all the time. That's not what you signed up for. So if you've watched this video all the way through, if you've been with me, you've hung with me on this live stream all the way through, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it because as an academic myself, someone who left the classroom to pursue other things, I know and understand how difficult a decision it is to walk away from the world that you have created for yourself, the life that you thought you were going to live, the time that you've invested, and the money that you are not going to get back anytime soon. Not going to get it back anytime soon. I know that struggle. I know the feelings of guilt that come with it. I know the feelings of shame that come with it. I know the feelings of fear that come with that because I have walked that walk. I've been in that place. And let me tell you something. The most liberating thing, and you know this because you come from this world that we teach our students, right, is the freedom to choose. You walk into classroom as a freshman, and this is the first time that you're going to have the freedom to choose your life, choose your destiny, pick your major, decide what you want to be for the rest of your life. Your life starts today. We preach that in freshman orientations all across this country. Well, here's what I have to say to you, my fellow adjuncts, professors, graduate TAs, aspiring teachers. This is your life. This is your moment. You get to live the rest of your life. You get the freedom to choose if you're going to continue to live to pay your student loans every month and hope that's enough left over for you to at least maybe buy a new car that might be 3 years old with 30,000 miles on it if you're really lucky. Or if you're going to take that skill set that you have paid for and you own and no one can take it from you. If you're going to take that knowledge and that skill set and maybe a little bit of a learning curve if you don't know how to market yourself, but if you're going to take that and build a better life and start over with the understanding that I bring to this table so many experiences and I actually deserve to be paid for those. And so I'd like my money, please. If you have any questions for me, if I can help you in any way, please leave a comment below. If you're interested in learning more about the magic of starting over, which is my new book that's out, check the link that I have attached to this somewhere. And if you want to talk to me one-on-one about the starting over or what it might look like as you begin to start over in the process of doing that and kind of the things that might come up that you want to think about, book a session with me. They're not free, but they are inexpensive because I get where my academics are coming from. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll swing back around and I'll answer them. Thanks for whoever's watching. I really, really appreciate you. Have a good night. Bye now.